Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for today's Data Summit, Census Data About Persons with Disabilities and Aging Populations. We're delighted to have you with us to broaden your knowledge during our expansive Data Summit series. My name is Nicole Yearwood, Partnership Specialist for the New York region, and I am your host for today. Before I go into the agenda, I'd like to cover some basic information and house rules. This session is being recorded. This summit will be recorded for the benefit of attendees and other stakeholders who are unable to be present. For those who do not wish to be recorded, please take this time to opt out and drop from this session now. Closed captions are available for this session. You can click on the link in the chat or go to the multimedia viewer on the right side of your screen. Use the bar on the right to scroll down and click Continue to access the closed caption website. Our ASL interpreter is also on the WebEx stage. You can adjust the view by using the arrows in between the presentation and the video. A link to access today's recorded session will be sent once it is available. Due to the large number of participants on this webinar, everyone has been muted. We encourage everyone to utilize the chat for any questions or feedback. Because of the volume of participants, we will not be able to answer all questions. For any questions that are not answered, please visit ask.census.gov. For any media-related inquiries regarding apportionment or redistricting, please reach out to the Public Information Office at pio@census.gov. For your convenience and future reference, please expect a PDF and resource sheet for today's presentation within 48 hours. The data dissemination team's point of contact will be provided near the end of this presentation. And remember, this webinar is being recorded. Designed for the novice data user, today's Data Summit covering census data about persons with disabilities and aging populations will provide an overview of the surveys, several data tools, and digital resources available on census.gov that will help you locate and extract data on these two populations to help you serve them better. At the conclusion of this session, you will have an increased awareness of the vast data products available through the U.S. Census Bureau. Be better equipped to utilize some of the free online tools available on census.gov. Have resources and toolkits to assist with navigating data available through census.gov. Now, let's go through today's program. Our agenda will include opening remarks from special guests Erica Hudson, Senior Public Policy Analyst, and Jennifer M. Koo, Census Research Assistant, both from the National Disability Rights Network. Then we'll turn it over to Ana Maria Garcia, Data Dissemination Specialist for the U.S. Census Bureau, who will guide you through her informative presentation on today's topic. After our key presenters, Linda Burke, Partnership Specialist, will moderate the Q&A session. Then I will wrap up today's program. Before I turn it over to our speakers, I'd like to provide a high-level update on the 2020 census. Thanks to you, our partners, we were successful in meeting the goal of the 2020 census to count everyone once and only once and in the right place. As you may be aware, the apportionment data was released to the public on April 26, showing that our nation has grown by 7.4%. That is more than 22,700,000 people since our last decennial count in 2010. As you can see, a link to the full press release on the apportionment data is in the presentation, which again will be shared with you after this summit. Due to modifications to processing activities, COVID-19 data collection delays, and the Census Bureau's obligation to provide high-quality data, states are expected to receive redistricting data by August 16th in legacy or in untabulated format. The full redistricting data with toolkits for ease of use will be delivered by September 30th. The Census Bureau will notify the public prior to releasing the data. For more information on redistricting, including links to geographic support products such as maps, tables, and files, visit the Redistricting Press Kit link at the bottom of the page when you receive the PDF of our presentation. And again, any media-related inquiries on apportionment and redistricting should be referred to the Public Information Office at pio@census.gov. For all other inquiries, you can call 301-763-INFO or visit ask.census.gov. Now, on to our program. I'd like for you to help me welcome our first guest for today, Erica Hudson, Senior Public Policy Analyst for the National Disability Rights Network. Erica joined NDRN's public policy team in February of 2019, advocating on voting rights and the 2020 census participation. She is passionate about ensuring human dignity and justice for all. Please extend a warm welcome to Erica. Erica, you can begin.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me all right by chance?
I can hear you just fine, Erica. Thanks.
Gorgeous. Thank you so much, Nicole. And hi, everyone. Thank you so much for that warm introduction. As shared, my name is Erica. I'm a public policy analyst with the National Disability Rights Network, NDRN, which is the National Membership Association for the federally mandated protection and advocacy systems for individuals with disabilities in the United States. There is a protection advocacy system in every U.S. state, D.C., Puerto Rico, the 4 territories, along with a P&A associated with the 4 Corners region of the Southwest that specifically serves Native Americans with disabilities. So again, it is my distinct honor to be here with you all today, along with my colleague Jennifer, who will be talking in just a moment. But I really just want to take this opportunity to say thank you to all the Census Bureau staff and all of you for your incredible efforts in 2020 and the Get Out the Count efforts that incurred. NDRN really had the opportunity to engage in the 2020 census because not only did we also want to ensure that the 2020 census was fair and accurate for everyone, but we also wanted to ensure that it was fully inclusive and accessible to people with disabilities. And again, that's where we really had the opportunity to connect with the Bureau and you all to make sure that that happened. So we have the opportunity throughout our efforts to encourage folks to not only participate in the 2020 census, but all U.S. Census Bureau surveys, which I imagine we will get into more detail during today's conversation, which I know I'm really excited about. But today, Jennifer and I also wanted to share some of the common questions that we are asked throughout our efforts with Census Bureau, which includes why is this important to people with disabilities and how do we use this data every single day? And Jennifer is going to talk about why this is so important as she is our resident census data expert. But for me, having had the opportunity to work with folks last year in particular, I always got the question, well, why and how do we use this in our daily lives? And for me, it comes down to that we use this data from the Census Bureau every single day in one shape or another. And for us within the disability community, we're often told, well, there are no people with disabilities in our community, so it doesn't really matter. And if we look at census data, we know that that's a false statement. And that's how we have to use the data by the Bureau every single day. So for example, I also do voting in my work in public policy. And when I have the opportunity to work with policymakers and election officials and any type of decision maker within the world of voting, they often say, well, we don't need to be accessible or inclusive because there are no people with disabilities here. And that's not true, especially if you look at U.S. Census Bureau data. And that's how we use it in our everyday life. And it is so important. And with that, I just want to say thank you all so much and pass it on to my fantastic colleague, Jennifer, who's going to go into more detail of why this is also important.
Thank you so much, Erica. Let me just give Jennifer her proper introduction. Now for our next speaker, help us welcome Ms. Jennifer Koo, Census Research Assistant for the National Disability Rights Network. She currently works with NZRN Census team to conduct a large-scale investigation of disability representation and inclusion in federal data. Some of her responsibilities include researching federal data sources, including the Census and the American Community Survey, engaging in a multi-stakeholder network, producing interactive webinars and materials to guide public policy around the census, data collection on people with disabilities, and conducting independent demographic research on intersectionality within the disability rights movement. Jennifer, you can now begin.
Thank you so much. Hi all, this is Jennifer. I'd be delighted to speak more today about why federal data is important to NDRN and the disability community. We know that people with disabilities are considered a hard-to-count population, which means that they are at a greater risk of being undercounted and misrepresented in federal data. We deeply appreciate the measures the Bureau has taken to include people with disabilities and make participation in federal surveys, such as the decennial census, more accessible, because inclusive data is important to dismantle disability-based discrimination and advance opportunities and protections so that people of all abilities can fully participate in society without barriers to flourishing. Federal programs play a critical role in protecting the political, sociocultural, and economic rights of people with disabilities. A fair and accurate census count is essential for the appropriate allocation of funding and strategic decision-making because this data tells us how many people are eligible for certain programs. And some of the programs that rely on census data for federal funding include our protection and advocacy systems, which provide legal, administrative, and other services to people with disabilities, education grants, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, Medicaid, housing, vocational rehabilitation and employment programs, transportation, individual federal funding, and so much more. And one thing that we just really want to emphasize is that disability is everywhere and is a part of every community. And we'd like to encourage everyone to participate in and conduct inclusive outreach for federal surveys to protect the rights of people with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Erica and Jennifer. The Census Bureau is so fortunate to have such a long list of supportive and helpful partners across the nation, from an impressive list of elected officials to a robust collection of nonprofit and philanthropic agencies. Our incredible partners have done plenty of heavy lifting to help us reach their constituents for today's Data Summit. We hope you will have the chance to take a closer look at these pages once you receive the presentation, and would like to once again thank each and every one of you for helping to make our Census Bureau Data Summit series a success across the nation. For this, we are very grateful. Next up is our key presenter, Ana Maria Garcia, Data Dissemination Specialist for the U.S. Census Bureau. Ana Maria has been with the Census Bureau for more than 20 years and has held various positions in the New York Regional Office. In her current role, she is responsible for providing instructions to community groups, staff of elected officials, government agencies, and the general public on how to access census data. Today, she's here to share her knowledge with you. Anna Maria, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm actually thrilled to be here, and I wanted to say that the two presenters who, started this summit, if it wasn't for partners like them that support us in gathering the data, it makes it so much easier for us to be able to provide to the communities specific data. So thank you to both of you. So I'd like to get started with the presentation now. So I'm going to start with actually the next slide, which will start to talk about our objectives. So what I want to leave you with after today's summit is a definition of disability, how the Census Bureau defines it, how we collect disability data, discuss the American Community Survey, which contains the data that we've collected, learn some statistics about persons with disabilities in the United States. For this example, I'm doing the United States, but you can look at it in other geographies. We're also going to look at some data about the aging population. We're going to learn more about Census.gov and how you can request customized presentations or workshops, and that'll come towards the end of the summit. And then we're going to do a live demonstration. I'm just going to demonstrate two tools to show you the breadth of the information that we have. On this next slide, what we're going to be able to see is the definition of disability. And that definition is it comes from our glossary, and it has a time component. So the question asks, do you have a disability or difficulty? And I'm going to share with you the 6 sections that it does. And it asks you, has this persisted for 6 months or longer? So that's the time component for it. And the Census Bureau collects the disability data primarily through the American Community Survey that you've heard mentioned several times now. We also collected in the Survey of Income and Program Participation, known as SIP, and the Current Population Survey. If we stay on this slide, I just want to speak briefly about the American Community Survey. As I said, there are 6 questions. And it says, do you have difficulty with hearing or with vision or with concentrating or remembering or making decisions, which we've categorized as cognitive difficulty or ambulatory difficulty? Or do you have a difficulty with self-care? Or are you able to do independent living? In other words, do you have difficulty doing errands or going to a doctor's visit on your own? And so we capture that data in those 6 categories. And if the individual responds yes, then they are categorized as having had a disability because it's lasted more than the 6 months that's asked in the question. The other survey that I mentioned was SIP, the Survey of Income and Program Participation. That's a longitudinal survey, and it's conducted anywhere between 3 to 5 years, and it follows an individual. In 2014, SIP was redesigned, and the disability data that was collected started using the 6 disability questions from the American Community Survey. So you see a consistency in the data that we are collecting. It also added some questions related to child disability, because we have that data as well. And then it added some questions about disability related to work. So if we look on the next slide, what we will see is the American Community Survey. So I want to speak a bit about the American Community Survey. It is outside of the decennial. It is our largest survey, and it provides data for your community. And we collect the data once a month, and we survey about 3.5 million households. And as you can see on the slide, we cover quite a bit of topics, more than 40 of them. And we produce 11 billion estimates each year. So you can, say if we did 11 billion for 2017 and 11 billion for 2018, you get to see that there's quite a bit of data. So that's why I wanted to give you a live demonstration so you can see how to navigate some of our tools. And to the right of this slide, you can see that we have 3 data releases, the 1-year estimates, which are for geographies that have over 65,000 people in them. So that's going to include all of our states, many of our counties, our large cities. And so we produce them, and we're going to produce that. We're actually going to release it in September, in a couple of months. We release the data a year after it's collected. So this will be the 2020 data that we're releasing, and that first year estimate, that 1-year estimate, will be released in September of 21. We have a 1-year supplemental estimate, which includes geographies that have from 20,000 to 64,999 in population. And we're going to release that one in October of 21. And then our last release, which is our final for the year, is the 5-year estimate. And that includes data for all geographies. And we're going to release that in December of 2021. And it's important to note that the 1-year and the 5-year are designed for you, the user. If you're looking for state data, we recommend use the 1-year estimate. But if you're looking for data that wants to compare a state and possibly with a county or a census tract, we recommend that you use the same estimate. So we would recommend that you use the 5-year estimate because that's the largest sample and it has all of the geographies in it. So that's a caution that we give you about the American Community Survey. And I'm going to show you when we go online how you can get some of that data. If we look on this next slide, what we're going to see are the characteristics that are collected in the American Community Survey. So you see demonstrated here their demographic characteristics, which are just 4 of them. There's social characteristics, which have a couple of them, and I've highlighted for you that this section is where we ask the 6 questions relating to disability. We have housing characteristics and economic characteristics. The thing is that any of this data is available at all of the different geographical levels that you'll learn a little bit about today. So if we look at the next slide, I just pulled out some data points because there's so much data that I said, you know what, let me just give them some data points. And I looked at the civilian non-institutionalized population. And that means that I've excluded anyone who is in a nursing home, in a hospital. So this is the civilian non-institutionalized population. So you see here that there were 41.1 million, or 12.7% of the population in 2019 had a disability. 7.9 million of that 7.9 million of that non-institutionalized population between the ages of 18 to 64 with a disability were also employed in 2019. So you're starting to see we can look at the total population, we could look at age cohorts of the population and look at that data and present that data. As one of the presenters said, you can see the data and then, give the facts of what is actually present in your communities. And then I also looked at median earnings. So $25,270 was the median earning of people 16 and over with a disability who had earnings in 2019. So these were three salient points that I wanted to bring out for persons with disabilities in the United States. And as I said before, we can get this at not only at the national level, but we can get it at the state level, at the county level, and at the census tract level, and even at a lower level. And I've cited, this data comes from the 2019 one-year estimate, and I took it from it's called DPO2, DP meaning demographic profile. So this is where the data was gleaned from. On this next slide, we'll see a visualization of the different types of disabilities, right? So there are the 6 categories, and then we've done it by age cohorts. So 5 to 17, 18 to 64, and 65 and above. And then we broke it out by gender. And I've sort of circled for you the ambulatory difficulty. As you can see, there's about estimated about 11 million persons 65 and over that have difficulty with ambulatory, whether they're, walking upstairs, walking for an extended period of time, like that. And so that wasn't surprising to me. I said, oh yeah, that sort of makes sense, right? But then I looked at all of the others, and I looked at the cognitive difficulty. So if you look at the bottom left of this visualization, you'll see that the age cohort of 18 to 64 had the higher estimate of persons with cognitive difficulties. And so then I thought about it, and I said, oh yeah, this is looking at persons that were non-institutionalized, so that would sort of stand to reason. So one can do with the data visualizations like this to put into a report that you're writing, a presentation that you're making. And that's the beauty of the data that we have, that you can actually present it in a multitude of ways. On this next slide, what we're going to see is data on the aging population. Yeah, and for this presentation, I chose the population 65 and over, right? There is no age at which we define aging. And I'll show you that when we get to the online demonstration. So if you're running a program that's serving 60 and above, that's your aging population. For this exercise, I use the population 65 and above or over. And I looked at maybe about 10 or 11 different data points. So I looked at the total population and compared it with those 65 and over. So you can see 328 million plus for total population and 54 million 65 and over. Then I said, well, let me look at some marital status information. And so for the total population, and the question is, are you now married? And it does not include those who were separated. For the total population, 47.6% said yes. When you look at those 65 and over, it was 55.6%, slightly higher. Then I said, we have this category, grandparents responsible for their grandchildren. And so in the total population, grandparents responsible for their grandchildren are about 2%. And yet if you look at the population 65 and over, it's 1.2%. So we can see that some persons who are aging are still responsible for their grandchildren. That's something, if you were looking at developing a program that services grandparents, that's a data point that I'd look into a little bit more to see what types of services they can benefit from. Then I wanted to look at residents in the same house. So the question is, were you living in this household last year? And so 3% of the total population said yes. So indicates there's some mobility, people move around. But if you look at the people 65 and over, 93.7 said yes. So there's much less mobility of moving from their house to another house. I looked at employment status. So the total population is 60.5% employed. And if you look at 65 and over, 18% of that population is still employed. I looked at mean earnings, much higher for the total population, about 93,000 as compared to 63,000 for persons 65 and over. And probably quite a number of factors go into that. Maybe people are not working full-time and all of that. I looked at persons living 100% below poverty level. And that for the total population, it was 12.3%. Lower for the population 65 and over at 9.4%. And then I wanted to look at what we call tenure. We at the Census Bureau call tenure. Do you own or do you rent the housing unit in which you live? And so for those that were owner occupied for the total population, it was 64.1%. And yet for those 65 and over, it was 78.1%, a much higher rate of owner-occupied housing units. And then, so I wanted to compare it with renter-occupied. And renter-occupied in the total population was 35.9, nearly 40%. And for 65 and over, it dropped down to 21.9%. So these are just some of the points. I'm going to take you to this particular table, S01035, that will give you quite a bit of information and data that you can compare persons 65 and over to the total population and get a sense of how the population 65 and over is faring against the total population. If we move to the next slide, what this is the geography. You heard me mention geography several times. So let's just look at this. Let's look at the left side of the screen. And that center where it goes from nation all the way down to block are the main geographies that people look for. People look for data on the geographies to the left and to the right, but the geographies that are usually where data is gotten from is anywhere from the United States all the way down to the block. The block is the smallest geography that we have, and it's only available during a decennial. So when 2020 census data is released, you'll see block level data available. If you're looking at the American Community Survey, the lowest geography is your block group, right? And then in the American Community Survey, you can get data anywhere from block group all the way to the nation, as you can do for the census, except the census will drop down one to the block and then all the way up to the nation. And to the right of this slide, what you see are depictions of the different geographies. So you'll see at the bottom a block. Blocks come together and form block groups. block groups come together and form census tracts. Census tracts become part of a county, and a county becomes part of a state. So you get how we start to build the geographies and then are able to provide you with data at each one of these levels. Because this is how, at the block level is where we start to collect, and then we can build up. So I wanted you to see a sense of what we call census geography, and that for that, when you're looking for the data, and when we go online, I can show you how you can select the different geographical components that are demonstrated here. On this next slide, what we'll see is popular data tools. You heard mentioned that there's quite a bit of data tools that we have. We will only have time to look at two of them. One is QuickFacts, which just by its title would infer that this is a pretty simple way to get some data. And then the other is data.census.gov, which is our latest data retrieval system. And you can actually do some deep searching for data on data.census.gov, much more extensive than on QuickFacts. So we'll actually navigate through these two when we go online. If we look at the next slide, I believe what we have, is data.census.gov. This is what that tool looks like, the landing page of that tool. And I'm going to demonstrate how you can do a data search on that particular tool. And now what I'd like to do is, if you look at the next slide, is we'll do an online demonstration. So if I have the presenter rights, I can then go online and share. Thank you. Can you see census.gov on the screen? Yes. Okay, great. So now what I want to do is go here now, and we'll type in . Okay, can you see the website?
We can.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. So this is our census.gov website. And just on page 1, you can spend hours just looking at the data that we have there. We're not going to do that because we don't have the time to do that. But I wanted to show you one or two things. One was I wanted to show you where I would recommend that if you're looking for definitions and what we mean when we say aging, what we mean when we say disability, go to our glossary. Our glossary will give you definitions. I'm not saying that you'll agree with every single definition, but at least you will know how we are defining it, and then you can make the decision. Oh yeah, I can, that's in accordance with what I'm thinking, so I can use that data. Or this is very different from what I'm thinking. I might not want to use the data. So I'm going to look up aging. And if I scroll down, I'm going to find aging. And then I click on view. And so you see here in this definition, It's an increase in proportion of the population in the older ages. It does not define an age. So as I said before, you, depending on which program you are running or which program you are interested in, you defined the parameters of aging. And what I've normally seen is anything 55 and above. But I wanted to show you that we don't have a specific age for aging. Then if I went to disability, and clicked on view there, it provides a definition. And if you look at the wording, it's very similar, if not identical, to the wording that I put into the slide of the presentation. So I wanted to bring you and show you the glossary because it's a great place to begin to understand what it is that how it is that we're defining. And then you can make a decision that, yes, you will use that data or not use the data, okay? When I am leaving my glossary, I go up to my census logo, click on that, and that's going to bring me back to census.gov. So if I wanted, we were going to see quick facts. So I would go to explore data. I go down, scroll down and hit data tools and apps. And it's going to give you 3 pages of data tools. And that's not an extensive list, but we want to see quick facts. I know that quick facts is on page 2. So I'm just going to click onto the second page and then scroll down. And there's quick facts. Click on quick facts. And you should be taken to the quick facts page. Now, the thing about quick facts is it really, with just 1 or 2 clicks, you can get quite a bit of data. So let's look at some of the data that's presented in quick facts. You're going to get some population data, some age and sex data, some race and Hispanic origin data, some characteristics, whether people are veterans or foreign-born, some housing data, some family and living arrangements, okay? Remember the question that I pulled data from, were you living in the same household? This is living in the same house. So even that data is presented for you, right? Computer and internet use. You know, you can get quite a bit of information very quickly. Educational data, health data, economic data. And if you keep scrolling down, transportation, income and poverty data, and even some business data. And the default geography is always the United States that you can see here. Now, if you're interested in another place, let's look for Ohio. It's a smart search, so it's going to give you some options. Click on Ohio. And right away, you have the Ohio compared to the United States. You can, if you wanted not to do a comparison to the United States, you can remove the United States or whichever geography, just click on the X and remove them. And so you can choose in this quick facts tool up to 6 geographies and look at them across the screen. So if you were doing neighboring states, if you were doing some census tracts, you would only be able to get geographies that have over 5,000 people in them. Okay, so it doesn't have every single geography. So you're not going to find blocks, right? And you're not going to find block groups, but you'll find census tracts because census tracts have anywhere between 3,000 and 8,000 people in them. So you'll find some census tracts there. You'll find all of your counties and your state, and then the United States. So I wanted to show you this so that you can don't have to do necessarily a deep dive. You can look at quick facts first and then look and say, oh, this data, and then it might intrigue you to look at other data. But if you wanted to do a deep dive, we'd go to data.census.gov. So I'm just going to type it in here. And click search. Yeah, I'm going to choose the third one. I just happen to know that that's going to take us to the site. And access the tool. And this is exactly what you saw before. Two things I want to point out about data.census.gov. We have two ways in which you can search. You can search by what we call a single search. So it's just like a Google type search. So I do know that information on 65 and over is included in table S0103. Come on. S0103. Okay. Why is this S0? Okay. And as they're always smart searches. So there's your population 65 and over. Let's click on that. And here you see your table. And the table provides you with quite a bit of information. So you can see the race of persons for the total population in 65 and over. And you can, if we scroll down, we can look at household types and find that information, marital status, and find that information. And then if you wanted to compare both your total population with your 65 and over, this is a really good table in which one can do that. So that's why I wanted to show you this table. I also want to show you that the table identification number, that S0103, is up here. So in your looking for data, if you find a table that you say, oh my goodness, I probably going to use this quite a bit of times. Remember the table number, because then all you have to do is type in the table number and it'll take you directly to the table without having to do a search and figure out what terms are going to get you the data that you want. Okay. So yeah, so knowing that table number is really good. First try, it's not going to help because you won't know the table number, but I'm going to show you how you can get some of that information. And then here, where it says product, you can see that you're able to get not only the 2019 ACS 1 year and 5 year, but you can scroll all the way down, all the way to 2010. So if you wanted to, you can then download these into Excel and then start seeing trajectories across time. One of the things you can do to the table is you can click on your margin of error, it goes away, and now it makes the table a little bit easier for you to read. And this table wasn't too difficult because it only had 2 or 3 columns. There's some tables that have many more columns, so removing the margin of error for purposes of looking at it makes it much more pleasing. We also presently we're unable to print. They're working on that functionality, but we've given you the option to download it into Excel. So you export it into Excel and you should see it come up very quickly. There's the file already. You open up that file and then you'll have 2 tabs, one telling you about that particular table, and then the next one the actual data for you. So it makes it easier. And then if you wanted to do this for every single year, you could, and then do all of the manipulations that you are able to do in Excel. So you have this accessible to you. Okay, so I wanted to show you that. And then I want to now show you how that was a single search. I now want to show you how to do an advanced search. So you come here to advanced search. And in the advanced search, what you're able to do is browse by filters. So you could enter your geography and you can select, you see the same geography that you saw on the slide. So here I'm going to look for a census tract. And I'm going to look for a census tract inside of Connecticut. And then it gives me the option of all census tracts in Connecticut. I don't want to do that. That's a lot of data. So I'll look for census tracts in Fairfield County. And then again, it gives you the option of all census tracts, but I'm just going to choose one. And the moment that I select the geography, you see that it showed up at the bottom of my screen in that turquoise sort of color. So now the geography is set. I can look for topics. I happen to know that health includes disability information. So now I have disability, and for the census tract, I click on search. And what occurs in every single search, this will occur. It'll give you the data point that you call for. So it's 9.4% is the disabled population in Census Tract 1001, Fairfield County, Connecticut. And then it's going to list some tables that provide data about this particular data point. And in this case, they provided 94 tables. And you could look through any one of those tables and find one that that meets your needs. But let's look at table S1810. Usually the location of the table tells you it's, oh yeah, this table is of interest to me. So this one is going to give you data for persons who are disabled, right? So it's going to give you the total, and it's going to give you their disability, or persons with disabilities. And again, some race, some age, some the type of disability, right? So not only do you know the number of people who have a disability, you'll know the type. You won't know the specific disability, but you'll know the category that the disability is in. And you can get this data, the same thing you can do. You can get any data back all the way to, from 2019 all the way back to 2010. And you can get this, you know, you see this at the census tract level, you'll be able to get it at the county level, at the state level, and at the national level. So that's what I wanted to share with you. It's a brief demonstration, but you're going to hear how one can ask for trainings on this tool, data.census.gov, and on so many of the other tools that we have. I just want to mention another tool, which we're not going to see, but you know, you see that these tables are static tables. The data has been populated, and you know, there's no cross matching. If there's an other tool, the micro access data tool, we call it MDAT, where you can take some data variables, mash them up, and then get, you know, a particularly discrete slice of information that you want. And that's also available for you to request at any time that you're interested, for yourself, people in your organization, so you can have, and they are free of charge. So I want to, take this time and thank you for your attention and for your interest in census data. It's a place where one can come and look at all of the data that we have and inform yourself about how best one serves their community and what types of programming might be available to that the data supports, so that if one is writing a grant. So I want to say again, thank you, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Nicole.
Thank you so much, Anna Maria. Thank you so much for that great presentation and live demonstration. So you covered quite a bit of ground in a short amount of time. We have a lot of questions coming through the chat. And here to facilitate the Q&A portion of the program is my colleague, Linda Burke, Partnership Specialist from the New York region. Take it away, Linda.
Thank you, Nicole. Yes, Anna Maria, what a wealth of information, and you have a lot of questions piling up here for you. Let's start with the first one. It says, I noticed you mentioned that the American Community surveys households. Does that mean it doesn't include people who reside in nursing facilities or other institutions? Is there a place where that data can be found?
Oh, yes, for sure. It includes everyone. The table that we were looking at was household information. So that's why it's pulled out that way. And if you remember, the first data that I presented was for the civilian non-institutionalized. So we pulled it out that way. But yes, it includes people who live what we call group quarters. So you'll be able to see how many live in nursing homes. A group quarter might be a prison, like that. So yeah, it includes the entire population.
Okay, great. Next question. Can the table ID S0103 be filtered to a specific Hispanic ethnicity?
You'll actually get, I believe, now that I'm trying to remember the table, when I look at S0103 in the race categories, at the bottom will give you Hispanic information. So if it's not seen there, because I'm not recalling right this moment if it is there, what we could do is look at that table, then request it for Hispanics alone, and it'll give you that data for the Hispanic population.
Very good, thank you. Next question.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that, by racial category and by Hispanic origin, there's a treasure trove of data, not only by the Hispanic category, but we can actually filter down to the type of Hispanic, Colombian, Peruvian, Mexican, like that.
Okay, thank you. Next question. I would like to know the number of people in my area with disabilities by disability type and by language spoken at home. Can I get that breakdown?
You can get it for your area by disability and by disability type. Again, I'd have to look at language spoken at home. That's a different table. If we include the disability by type by language, but that's something that if you give your information in the chat, I'd be more than glad to look it up with you. And then we can figure out, yes, it does give it to us or it doesn't. Because sometimes we get the data and sometimes we don't have the data, or we might have to go and use the tool that I mentioned, the MDAT, the Microdata Access Tool.
Okay, very good. Based on the data, this is the next question. Based on the data from the U.S. Census, at what age do you notice the inflation point? That is, at what age do you notice the jump in the number of people with disabilities? Is this age associated with the aging of the population, or do the difficulties, whether to hear, see, move, etc., start before the aging?
Oh, yeah, start before the aging. We have data for children with disabilities, and we can get those categories as well. So it's not confined to the aging.
Okay, great. Next question. How would you search for 2 or more variables? Please, how many people over 65 have a computer in their home?
So we could look at data for computer access, like in their home. And then we can look to see if it's done by age cohort. But again, if it's not done in one of our static tables, we can absolutely use our MDAT tool that will allow us to mash up things that are not included in static tables.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is, when is the 2020 census data available?
For the the 2020 census data?
2020 census, yes. So we know the first count for the population was sent in April, and on August we get the redistricting, and September 30th we get it tabulated in more detail, and that's for redistricting purposes.
Yeah,
okay.
I don't. Yeah, okay.
Next question is, how would you search for 2 or more variables? I'm sorry, that's questions are grouped together.
Yeah.
I guess that looks like it's pretty much it.
Yeah, if people have questions, they could put them in the chat and then we'll look at them later on. And, when we send something out, we can respond generally to the question.
Right.
But thank you for your interest in and the questions. And if we collect the data and we have the variables, we can do some mashing up so that you can get what you're wanting. I just saw that someone asked, is there MDAT training? For sure, there's MDAT training. And you can learn in a couple of minutes from Nicole, I think it's Nicole Yearwood, who's going to let us know how one can request workshops and presentations.
Yes, I will.
So let me,
Okay, great.
I was going to wrap it up and say a couple of questions did come in addition, but because we are running out of time, Nicole, can you please explain to them how they can follow up? Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Linda and Maria. So before we conclude, I'm actually going to tell you how we're going to follow up with you. So just give us a few more minutes of your time. Thank you so much. We're going to share some very important resources with you. If you like today's summit, and I think you do by all the questions you're asking, we definitely have a lot more information we can help you with on our website, census.gov/Census Academy page, which is now on your screen. There you can find valuable information on our data dissemination and training programs. These are options where you can request a data training for your organization free of charge. You can also receive data gems. These are short how-to videos aimed at helping you increase your knowledge of census data, and they can be delivered directly to your inbox, and you can also gain access to our easy learn at your own pace tutorials. You can interact with our instructors as well during those webinars. And we are definitely here to assist you with all of your data needs. Next slide. To expand a little more on the free data services we offer, the Census Bureau has a team of specialists, much like Anna Maria, who can assist you in bringing the world of data to you by providing trainings, workshops, and presentations to you and your organization, once again, at no cost to you. Our team offers presentations and trainings tailored to the customer's data needs. They can also show you a variety of census data tools, data sets, and programs both virtually or in person while keeping with local COVID guidelines. Next slide. We have several data summits that we are presenting between now and the month of August. You can find information on the 2021 Data Summit page on Census.gov. In the search bar at the top, simply type in 2021 Data Summit Series to land at the page seen on this slide. To view them all, please be sure to click Show More. Look to see which ones suit your needs and register. It's a one-stop shop. Upon availability, you can find the recorded versions on this same 2021 Data Summit Series page. In addition to the national summits available on Census.gov, we are also offering regional summits. You can contact your local partnership specialist for more information or access the link to the New York Region's Data Summit catalog in the chat. Next slide. We want to know your thoughts because there's always room for improvement. There are two ways to tell us what you think about today's session. First, you may contact your regional office via phone or email. Feel free to contact the regional office that handles your state, or as you have been doing over the last year, connect with your local partnership specialist for any of your needs or to provide your feedback, and they will share them with us. The following slides will contain information about our regional offices. And as a reminder, a copy of this presentation will be emailed to you within 48 hours. The Atlanta Regional Office, Regional Director, George Grandy Jr. Chicago Regional Office, Regional Director, Marilyn A. Sanders. The Denver Regional Office, Regional Director, Kathy L. Lacey. Los Angeles Regional Office, Regional Director, Julie Lamb. New York Regional Office, Regional Director, Jeff T. Baylor. Philadelphia Regional Office, Regional Director, Fernando E. Armstrong. There has been a wealth of information shared today. Our hope is that you leave this webinar with three things: an increased knowledge of our free data resources, a deeper understanding of the importance of survey completion. After all, that is how we obtain the data. And last but not least, be inspired to spread the word about how the data helps us serve our communities better. Again, please expect a PDF and resource sheet of today's presentation in 48 hours. On behalf of my colleagues, both in front and behind the scenes on this webinar, and the entire Census Bureau staff, we want to thank our partners and speakers, Erica Hudson and Jennifer Koo, our wonderful key presenter, Anna Maria Garcia, and most of all, you, for your time, attention, questions, and continued partnership with the U.S. Census Bureau. And again, as a reminder, a PDF of this presentation will be available to you within 48 hours. Please feel free to follow up with our data dissemination program to have your questions answered. And thank you for joining us, and have a wonderful afternoon. This concludes today's webinar.